love the nice character, the happy-go-lucky, optimistic do-gooder who feeds off joy and passion. You'd be hard-pressed to name many times when this character was in a bad mood. They're almost grossly happy, as if the never-ending mountains of life's problems never seem to faze them. That's why I love when a nice character breaks down. Something slips past the cracks of their hardened cheerfulness, and we see a side of them we hadn't before. Whether it be physically hurting the people around you, yelling at your friends for the first time, or questioning your faith and morals, these are 8 times when the nice character gets a little more than upset. Starting off with one that you probably already know. If there's anything SpongeBob has shown to be, even now, is a giver. He'll give the shirt off his back to please people who don't deserve his level of generosity. SpongeBob would be the type of person that would click on every free nitro scam just off the strength of not thinking anyone could want to lie to him. Like, he's the type of person that would not just give money to the Nigerian prince, but make sure his kids are full of Krabby Patties too. Outside of a few poorly executed episodes, SpongeBob is a nice, bubbly, optimistic character. However, one thing I've missed from this show is that it would show when his limits were passed. Watching Can You Spare a Dime growing up, I was no stranger to SpongeBob being emotions other than happy. He's experienced frustration up to this point a few times, but almost each time he's either been brief, unserious, or usually directing that anger in a general sense, rather than focus on a specific person. Squidward would take advantage of SpongeBob's kindness and his patience with him, and the situation would run thin.
Where can I get one of these jobs?
Oh, they're everywhere, especially if you're green and have 6 tentacles.
Thanks. I'm gonna go look for one so I can stop mooching off my friends and they can get back to their lives.
For those who don't know or need a refresher, Squidward quit the Krusty Krab in protest of Mr. Krabs' accusation that Squidward stole money. However, he would realize that without a job, he'd be homeless, or in today's terms, living in an affordable home. SpongeBob, because of the nice character archetype and his somewhat one-sided friendship, would empathize with Squidward's situation and allow for him to squat in his home until Squidward gets back on his tentacles. Unfortunately for him, not only did this not happen, but SpongeBob went above and beyond for someone who was actively taking advantage of him. He asked him to wear a maid outfit with heels. How many of y'all are wearing maid outfits for the bros? Actually, don't answer that. Feeling pent up, SpongeBob would not only release that anger towards Squidward, as shown before, but also to Mr. Krabs, who was involved in this situation.
Listen, you crustaceous cheapskate! Squidward's been living at my house, driving me crazy, and you're not gonna hire him back all because of a stupid dime!
The raw anger in this episode still to this day is a breath of fresh air for the character because it was justified and funny. It was logical for a character who many would say can be more immature than Mr. Krabs and Squidward to feel like this entire situation was stupid. However, this next character was seen as stupid, but made a very smart remark. Other times when the nice character breaks, you didn't think the show would go there. To those who haven't seen Total Drama Island, each character embodies a certain stereotype or archetype. Gwen is the goth girl, Heather is the popular girl, Lashana is the... Actually, I'm gonna let you describe her. Let's see what type of subscribers I have here. Where you had the cunning smarts of female characters like Heather, Courtney, Gwen, and Lashana, to name a few, Lindsay got pretty far in the show's competition, and it wasn't necessarily because of any strategies she came up with.
Can I see that for a sec? Now make yourself useful and clip my toenails.
Heather, shown here, would make an alliance with Lindsay, and the show made it clear that she saw Heather as a genuine friend, if not for surface level reasons such as her popularity and the fact that she thought of her as another hot girl on the island. However, to the viewer, it was painfully obvious that Heather was using her. Despite all of this, Lindsay throughout almost all of Total Drama Island would be nice to people. She'd be excited for other people and display this level of enthusiasm for both the hosts and contestants who could honestly never match it, with the exception of Owen, of course. It wasn't until Lindsay's last episode where things would change. In this episode, Heather would repeatedly show Lindsay in every way that she's just using her to get across the finish line, both metaphorically and literally, with this episode's challenge being 2 bike races, with the second one being a lot more interesting than the first one. The first person to cross the finish line gets invincibility from being voted out, and the last person to cross the finish line gets eliminated. Owen, Duncan, Heather, and Lindsay are the final 4 in the second competition, with Duncan and Owen completely wiping out, leaving Heather and Lindsay as the only ones who actually can pass the finish line. There's subtle gestures here, such as Lindsay's pony-esque bike clearing the way for Heather, or Lindsay being happy for Heather passing passing over her, but little does she know, in Heather crossing the finish line first and Lindsay second, even though Owen and Duncan didn't pass the finish line at all, that still technically makes Lindsay second, and thus eliminated from the entire competition. Let's just say she doesn't take the news politely.
You really are mean! And all that bad stuff people say about you is true! Like how you're a two-faced, backstabbing, lying little...
It was like her whole world was flipped upside down. Yeah, she is dense, but what makes this meltdown so satisfying is that even if she was the last person to figure out who Heather is, at least she did, and was able to let her know how she felt about that. Oh, and if you're wondering what it sounds like uncensored,
like how you're a two-faced, backstabbing, lying little... no good, selfish, heartless, pushy, bossy, mean bully of a girl!
Like with the SpongeBob break, it was justified here tenfold because Heather is a very manipulative person and took advantage of someone who was, admittedly, very easy to take advantage of, showcasing both Heather's ruthlessness but also Lindsay's evolution with this dynamic they share. However, not every person on this list has a satisfying meltdown. To anyone who's seen Inside Out or Inside Out 2, you would know that Joy carries the motivation for the entire crew, who sometimes begrudgingly defer all responsibilities to her, who's more than happy to make sure that Riley is not just surviving, but thriving. Basically, she carries the team. In fact, if we're being honest here, her back should look like the ridges of a bendy straw after the most recent movie. Because within Inside Out 2, this becomes a bigger challenge with the introduction of new emotions like anxiety, who, like with sadness in the first movie, sends Joy away, but this time with the original crew. Throughout their journey back to headquarters, the other emotions insist on letting Joy know how much better anxiety seems to be at managing Riley's emotions.
What is the matter with you?
I don't like this vessel.
Well, that's all we have.
How much longer till we get there?
We'll get there when we get
I
there.
bet anxiety would know how long, down to the minute.
Well, she just knows everything, doesn't she?
However, for a lot of the movie, Joy brushes it off and uses her natural enthusiasm to keep the team focused on their mission. Like with Lindsay and SpongeBob, but probably even more so here, Joy has a lot of natural enthusiasm. I mean, it's in her nature and in her name. But even she has a limit. As they venture deeper into Riley's mind, they have less of an idea of where they're going. And Joy, who only wants to get back to headquarters, that's her only mission here, has the perspective of not wanting to put the frustration of not being there on her team the way that her team is putting it on her and letting her know that everything is hopeless, whining and complaining the entire time. And I think some people don't know this, but maybe you have a person in your friend group, maybe you are of this person, but there is a lot of weight that comes with someone who complains all the time. Personally, I think if you're complaining to someone, if you're venting in good faith, that's different. Friends should be able to vent to friends, but the person who's constantly complaining and venting all the time, I think is not spoken about enough how much of a weight that could be. Sometimes, being polite is no longer the best option.
The Riley we knew is gone!
And if Joy can't see that, well, then she's delusional.
Of course I'm delusional! Do you know how hard it is to stay positive all the time when all you folks do is complain, complain, complain? Jiminy mother loving toaster strudel! Do you think I have all the answers? Of course I don't!
Although not as cathartic as when Lindsay snapped or as funny as when SpongeBob snapped, seeing Joy that way snapped the crew back to the plan, seeing that Joy is just as, if not more serious about saving Riley, and simply doesn't want to add to the well of negativity that they were creating. Sometimes you push forward simply because even if you don't know what to do, whining and giving up doesn't help. And it didn't feel great seeing Joy finally break down over several moments of being nagged with negativity, so let's go through when a character's meltdown can be wholesome. If you've been noticing a pattern between many of these characters, SpongeBob, Lindsay, and Joy, they're all very limited in their emotional range. They're usually almost always happy, and that's a good thing. This means we're not really talking about characters like Steven, Luz, or Finn, for example, who have many moments of breaking down as well, but these characters have a more broader and more defined emotional range. The characters focused on in this video are designed intentionally to almost always be cheerful, amongst many gloomy or meaner people. Gumball is not that person.
Oh no, scary drink. What would happen if I spilled it? Ooh. What do you take me for, some kind of cold?
Gumball is very selfish, careless, and in this case, clumsy, which probably does his feline ancestors a big injustice. What am I even talking about? This does his own mother injustice. Have you seen the agility this woman has? As the computer catches on fire and explodes, naturally someone has to take responsibility for it. Enter Alan within this episode called The Saint, who is a very optimistic and charitable balloon and has built a reputation for being grossly nice, and he's gladly taking responsibility for something he didn't do. Gumball, despite being cleared of any wrongdoings here, decides to take the rest of this episode's length to try and break Alan. Why? Well, on the surface, it's because he doesn't believe that Alan can simply be nice, but deep down, it's a much different reason that we'll get to in a second. Gumball writes very discriminating status updates on Alan's Elmore Plus account, plants fake evidence that ruins his relationship with Carmen, and does the worst crime imaginable, stealing someone's meatball.
But I always save the best part of my meal for someone who deserves it more than I. I wanted you to have it, for being such a great friend.
Oh, and he kidnaps Alan's family and sells them away to be tortured, but who cares about all that? Anyway, point is, Alan continues to take the moral high ground, which makes Gumball angrier and stoop to lower levels. Deep down, it is to mask his own insecurities. He doesn't want to put in the effort to become a better person, but he also doesn't want to see other people being a better person to remind him that he should probably become a better person himself. Granted, this is an awful trait for a character to have, but what makes it a great trait for Gumball, and one of the reasons I love the show, is because the show and most of the characters see through him. Darwin, who plays the foil in this episode, continually expresses disappointment in Gumball stooping as low as to mess with the person who literally saved him. Towards the end of this episode, Gumball admits defeat and sees that Alan is just really nice. But this episode has a neat twist.
Can you please stop making that noise?
What?
Dragging your feet, it's grating!
Oh, what? I don't understand. You mean this?
Stop it, you jerk!
Oh, I feel so much better about myself. I gotta go tell Darwin!
Well, it may seem that Alan broke, he didn't, which is really cool. He gave Gumball what he wanted, which actually makes him even more virtuous than even Gumball would know. It's oddly more wholesome and satisfying because everyone wins here. Plus, even if Alan was upset, I think it's justified. The boy ate his last meatball, and that's a sin that no one should forgive. Before we get to the next one, and no, this is not an ad break, you can take your finger off the screen. Jeez, have a little trust in your boy. I just wanted to say that I've had more than these next 4 choices considered for this list. I've considered tens of characters for this video, and I would love to revisit this topic or any of my others within the Dynamic series, but just wanted to leave enough for a part 2 if people are interested. So if you are, you gotta let me know, which ironically, letting someone know was the key to avoiding this next meltdown. To anyone who hasn't seen Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Wilt is a very kind, charitable character. He has a very distinct trait of apologizing a lot to not offend anyone. He'd either do really well or get his words twisted so bad that he gets destroyed day 1 on Twitter, which, by the way, will be active on Twitter and Blue Sky. Foster's Home is a mean show, and I love it for that. Wilt does get taken advantage of frequently, and the episode Where There's a Wilt There's a Way cranks that to 11, and here's how. Imagine it's the weekend and you've had one thing that you wanted to do. Maybe watch a show, play a game, binge some videos, read a book. No way. I forgot who I'm speaking to. I'm sorry. So a book is this thing, it has pages on it that have words on it. You can't scroll through it. You have to manually turn the pages. There's some good books out there. So you have this one thing that you plan to do and everyone keeps getting in your way.
Just say, Mr. Harriman.
Master Wilt, our beloved Rumple Dumple has been adopted.
Just say that word.
Transport this suitcase to his adoptive family's chosen mode of conveyance.
Just say that word. Say that word. You can do it. Say it!
Do this thing.
Okay.
An errand here, a favor there, and all you wanted to do is that one thing. Now to my people pleasers out there, the ones who can't say no, this episode should speak to your soul. If there's one thing Wilt loves more than saying sorry though, it's basketball. The big game is on and all he wants to be is not interrupted while he's watching it. What makes this situation silly is that Wilt has such a great reputation that had he just explained the situation, I'm sure everyone would give him a day to watch the game. Except maybe Blue. But someone could have wrangled him in. We'd see throughout this episode that he can't even utter the words, squirming around trying to force it past his lips, which should speak to his character and his flaw of being too nice. Sometimes it's okay to be selfish. Even though I don't know how imaginary friends' life cycles work here, I'm sure you only live once. And this game is only live once, so it's such an easy solution for such a stubbornly nice character. However, when he does say no, he says it loud and repeatedly.
Okay, I'm done.
I love how over-the-top comedic his break is, but I also love how this episode ends. Blue congratulates him on standing up for himself, only to push him to get more chips.
Feel better?
You know what? I do.
Great. Now how about getting me my chips?
Sure, you got it, pal. Wait, I mean...
Sometimes when a nice character breaks, the situation can be quite silly. However, other times when a nice character breaks, the situation is very serious. You see, Ed is a very happy-go-lucky character. Within Ed, Edd, and Eddy, he's not the smart one and often isn't a leader in any scams against the other kids in the cul-de-sac, opting to go with the flow and just happy to spend time with his best friends. For today's scam, it starts off with a movie that turns into a food fight that ends with a very angry Ed.
Ed, what's the matter with you?
Away with you, unwanted pesters!
Ed! You listen to me, mister. You can't kick me out. I live here too!
So move!
Aside from this being very satisfying for those who feel like Sarah has been annoying within the show, this is very uncharacteristic for Ed. Listen, we're all lucky this man is nice, because he has the strength to destroy cities if he wanted to. Ed snapping is different from every other meltdown you've seen up to this point, because all of those were just one scene in a larger episode or movie. Imagine how tense something can be when almost the entire duration is about a character being so pissed off. This episode, Little Blue Ed, doesn't tell you immediately why Ed is upset. His two friends have very different ways of trying to figure it out and solve it though. Double D tries compassion and empathy, which is admittedly the better route to take, but it doesn't work. I do enjoy that in this episode, Ed, while still upset, largely leaves Double D alone until he annoys him too much. Eddy, on the other hand, tries aggression and brute force. He insults him all throughout the episode, but gets his karma for being so bold.
I'll give you 3 to get over yourself. 1, smile, you miserable. 2, snap out of it, you torment me! I'm hurt now.
Unlike the other moments in this video, you gotta appreciate how creatively aggressive Ed is here. His nails sinking into the tree stump, stuffing an entire turkey into Double D. Fam, he chewed off a slide. Do you understand how angry you have to be to chew off a slide? Despite this, his friends do try and it's very nice to see, but nothing seems to be working. It isn't until Plank gets involved and communicates to Johnny here to take off Ed's shoe, and everything changes.
Ed is happy once more!
All of this was because of the rock in his shoe. And while it seems like an overreaction, I kinda get it. You know, I haven't been the biggest fan of The Rock for a while now. Like, don't get me wrong, Prime Attitude Era Rock was incredible, although I was more of a Mankind, Taker Austin kind of guy personally, but being forced to feel The Rock's presence must have frustrated Ed as much as it has me over the years, so I'm glad he no longer has to deal with it. But other times, the situation doesn't have to take a long time to be memorable. In fact, this next situation is really just one sentence, but that one sentence is cemented in the fan base. Phineas is such a cheerful guy. All he wants to do is make each day count by doing something so memorable that it almost always ventures into being too crazy for a child to be doing. He doesn't know it, but his biggest antagonist oftentimes is his older sister, who always tries to bust him and Ferb for what they do. He's usually very oblivious to his sister's true intent, and that's a good thing. For such a Dorito head, he's actually very well-rounded and level-headed. But this episode is different.
Our vacation is more than halfway over, and what have we accomplished? Okay, so we built a roller coaster, we traveled through time twice, found Atlantis, blah, 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 blah. See? We hardly done anything.
He's clearly in some ways unsatisfied with his summer. You know, the summer where he did this, and this, and this, and this, And this, not this. And this too. Apparently he wants to go bigger, and his plan is to make the longest day of summer, the longest day they've ever had, by flying in a direction of sunlight. Despite local bully Buford actively tearing down the idea, Phineas believes in himself so much that he's betting the rest of his summer on completing this challenge. And what makes it so fun is that when Phineas sets his mind to do something, he'll do it, and get it done before his mom checks in on him. Towards the end of this special episode, their vehicle breaks apart, and they crash land on this island, and you get to see an emotion from Phineas that we don't see often. Hopelessness.
We can't. I can't believe there's nothing we can do to get off of this.
I think these moments hit different because we don't get to see them that often. Like when you spam them all the time, I think it loses its effect. It's uncharacteristic for them, and it makes you remember these scenes a lot more than the 100th time they're happy. With a little push from Isabella, Phineas comes up with a plan to get them back to Danville, and even with the odds stacked against them, Candace still drags her feet about everyone getting home safe, and we get to see another side of Phineas that we don't often see in just one short outburst.
Phineas, I'm not gonna get on a silly little tricycle.
Candace, we're in a hurry. Just get on the trike
There's
and we'll go.
no way
Get on the trike!
And Candace got on that trike. When you restrain yourself from making the nice character have an outburst, there's so many examples to show that it becomes iconic within the series. But this last one might be the best one of them all. It took 8 seasons, but The Simpsons would finally break Ned Flanders, a character who up to this point was very moral and very generous, even in the face of pure ignorance and malice. Within the episode Hurricane Nettie, the town of Springfield is in a direct path of Hurricane Barbara, and everyone is scrambling to get supplies to be safe. The Flanders family is no different, taking all the necessary precautions to set things up, and even offering assistance to their neighbors.
Oh, I'm sure I'd be a third wheel.
Oh, no, sirree. We'd be happy as hens to have
I would make it my business to be a third wheel.
Oakley dokley.
The problem is that their neighbors can be quite rude. But you know what else is rude? Apparently this hurricane. We're shown in this episode that people were running through the hurricane, and Homer, later in this episode, was saved by his family, despite wind power strong enough to sweep him off his feet. Listen, he's not a skinny man, and all I'm saying is if the wind can take him away, I don't know if his family has a stronger force combined than that. Despite its destructive power, everyone's homes within Springfield seem to be okay except for Ned's home, which is reduced to rubble. This doesn't just affect him, but his connection to his faith.
But Reverend, I need to know, is God punishing me?
Ooh, short answer yes with an if, long answer no with a but.
Even if you push religion to the side for a second, we're typically told that if you're a good person, good things will happen to you. And normally this is true, but it isn't always true. Good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to bad people, but bad things also happen to good people. Ned's spirit was broken in this episode, drowning out the optimism his family still has in this instance.
Why me, Lord? Where have I gone wrong? I've always been nice to people. I don't drink or dance or swear. I've even kept kosher just to be on the safe side. I've done everything the Bible says, even the stuff that contradicts the other stuff. What more could I do?
He'd reach out to the church for assistance, but no one and nothing seems to want to give him that assurance, only more discomfort. It isn't until the entire town dangles the visual of a renovated house in his face that his last string of sanity broke.
Oh, shoot.
Calm down, diddly 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 diddly. They did their best, shoddly iddly iddly diddly. Gotta be nice, hostility diddly biddly diddly. Ah, hell, diddly ding dong crap! Can't you morons do anything right?
Back off, man.
Oh, okay, dude. I wouldn't want you to have a cow, man.
Mr. Flanders, with all due respect, Bart didn't do anything.
Do I hear the sound of butting in? It's gotta be little Lisa Simpson, Springfield's answer to a question no one asked.
That is such a good line. I can't wait to use that on someone.
And as for you, I don't know you, but I'm sure you're a jerk. Homer, you are the worst human being I have ever met.
Hey, I got off pretty easy.
Seeing him express anger towards the town was very cathartic because he was frustrated, and while they did try to help, they're being very careless about it. I mean, come on, putting the toilet in the kitchen? I don't want to smell fudge when I'm reaching for the brownies, if you know what I mean. We'd learn later on that a lot of this was because of repressed anger and poor parenting from his parents who didn't believe in discipline. And it took an experimental turn from a doctor to get him to reel in his aggression, but it worked too well. Which, by the way, don't let some random adult spank your child for months on end. But anyway, ever since, he's been unable to fully express his anger, and you can see his mental instability in his facial expressions, particularly when his eyes twitch or when he says something after he's cured, quote unquote.
If any of you does something I don't like, you are gonna hear about it. And if you really tick me off, I'm gonna run you down with my car.
Yes, you shouldn't go around swearing up a storm at everything, but you shouldn't also bottle up what are very valid emotions to have. Anger is a valid emotion to have sometimes. When you bottle up certain feelings, they tend to come out in a very unhealthy way, and often to people who weren't the source of the emotion to begin with. And there's a lot of ways that I tend to deal with it, such as taking time to myself, venting to a friend, listening to not calm music, and just being empathetic that sometimes people may not know how their actions may affect you. Oftentimes, it takes being in someone's shoes to understand what they go through, which is what I covered in this body swaps dynamic video right here.